The death of the apostles marked a significant turning point in the early Christian church, leading to what many consider the beginning of apostasy. The apostles, chosen by Christ to spread his teachings, served as the foundational pillars of the Christian faith. Their direct relationship with Jesus and their leadership ensured doctrinal purity and guidance for the first generation of believers. However, as the apostles passed away, there was a growing vacuum of authority. The early church, without its original leaders, faced internal divisions and external pressures from Roman persecution and surrounding pagan cultures. With the apostles no longer present to defend the faith, false teachings began to infiltrate the church. This period of doctrinal confusion gave rise to various heresies and sects, distorting the original teachings of Christ. Leaders who lacked the apostolic commission started to introduce new practices and beliefs, gradually moving away from the core tenets of Christianity. This shift, often referred to as apostasy, is seen as a time when the true gospel became diluted by human philosophies and worldly influences. As the pure doctrine began to erode, the church entered a phase where it struggled to maintain the unity and clarity that the apostles had once ensured.
The first-century Iglesia Ni Cristo, Church of Christ, underwent a process known as apostasy, which is the falling away or deviation from the true teachings established by Christ and the apostles. According to Iglesia Ni Cristo's teachings, this apostasy took place shortly after the death of the apostles, leading to the corruption of the original doctrines of the Church of Christ. Here's a deeper look into the reasons for this apostasy and how the present-day Iglesia Ni Cristo believes it has restored the original church. Why the first-century Iglesia Ni Cristo apostatized. And here's the reasons. First, death of the apostles. The Iglesia Ni Cristo teaches that when the apostles were alive, they were able to maintain the purity of the church and its teachings. However, after their deaths, false teachings and influences began to infiltrate the early Christian community. Second, introduction of pagan beliefs. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, various pagan ideas and practices began to influence the original Christian faith. One major shift was the introduction of the Trinity doctrine and the divinization of Christ, which the INC teaches was never part of the original teachings of the first-century church. Third, Roman influence. The Roman Catholic Church emerged as a dominant force during the centuries following the Apostolic era. The INC believes that the Romanization of Christianity, especially under Emperor Constantine, led to significant changes in doctrine and practice that were not aligned with the original teachings of Christ. These changes are seen as the root of the widespread apostasy. Fourth, proliferation of false teachers. INC doctrine emphasizes that after the apostles, many false teachers arose, leading to the gradual erosion of the original faith. The warnings given by the apostles about the coming of false prophets were, in their belief, fulfilled during this period. Fifth, political and religious compromise. The institutionalization of the Christian church within the Roman state led to compromises between political power and religious authority. This merging of church and state further distorted the original doctrines of Christ, according to the INC. How the current Iglesia Ni Cristo restored the original church. 1. Divine restoration through Brother Felix Y. Manalo. Iglesia Ni Cristo believes that Brother Felix was chosen by God as the last messenger to restore the true Church of Christ in the last days. According to INC teachings, God revealed to Brother Felix the original doctrines that had been lost during the apostasy. Second, rejection of unbiblical doctrines. The Iglesia Ni Cristo restored the original doctrines by rejecting teachings that they believe were introduced during the apostasy. This includes the rejection of the Trinity and the affirmation that Jesus Christ is not God, but the Son of God, a human being chosen and anointed by God and glorified by God the Father. Third, biblical foundation. INC claims to follow the Bible strictly and adhere only to the teachings found in the Scriptures. They believe this return to biblical authority is central to the restoration of the true church that Christ established in the first century. 4. One true church. The Iglesia Ni Cristo teaches that it is the only true church today, as it is the re-establishment of the original Church of Christ. They believe that just as there was one church in the first century, there is only one true church in these last days, and that is the INC. 5. Worldwide mission and growth. Since its official restoration and rebirth in 1914, the Iglesia Ni Cristo has grown rapidly, spreading to different parts of the world. This global expansion is seen as a fulfillment of biblical prophecy that in the last days, God would gather his people from all nations. 6. Unity of the Church. The INC emphasizes the unity of its members, all of whom follow the teachings and leadership of the executive minister. This is viewed as a continuation of the unity that the first century Christians had under the apostles. 7. Strict adherence to original teachings. The INC prides itself on maintaining the original practices of the early church, such as worship services, organization, and moral conduct, believing that these align with how the first century Christians lived and worshiped. The Iglesia Ni Cristo teaches that the apostasy of the first century church was a result of external influences, political compromise, and the rise of false teachings after the death of the apostles. In 1914, through Brother Felix Y. Manalo, they believe the original church was restored according to God's plan. By returning to the biblical doctrines, rejecting unbiblical traditions, and restoring the unity and purity of the faith, INC considers itself the continuation of the true Church of Christ in these last days, tasked with preparing for the return of Christ.